Hello and welcome back to Learn Linux TV. In this video, what we're going to do is get back to Fedora because I know a lot of you guys are crazy about Fedora and I don't blame you. We're going to take a look at Fedora Workstation again, but this time what I'm going to do is count down 15 of the first things that you should do once you install Fedora Workstation. And my list will consist of useful applications and recommended tweaks. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about and you have yet to use Fedora, I highly recommend that you check out Fedora. It's a very good distribution of Linux. Fedora features the GNOME desktop environment, but it doesn't just feature it, it honors it. It gives you a pristine GNOME experience without any distribution-specific tweaks other than the wallpaper, so it's a very good experience if you're a fan of GNOME. However, the vanilla GNOME experience can be a bit of a double-edged sword because that also means that some of the quality of life improvements that other distributions add to their implementation of GNOME, those improvements might be absent in Fedora. So that means that there's some things that you might want to configure, install, or set up to make the experience even better, and that's exactly what we're going to cover today. But before we get to that, I need to let you guys know that I have 2 new courses available over on Udemy. First, if you're in the process of learning Linux for the very first time, you should definitely check out my Linux Essentials course. Not only will this course teach you everything you need to know to get started and learn the basics of Linux, it's also going to help you get certified and earn your Linux Essentials credential through LPI. And the Linux Professional Institute is the world's largest Linux and open source focused vendor-neutral certification body, so by earning certifications through LPI, your credentials will be recognized around the world. But even if you don't have any interest in getting certified, this course is still a great fit for those of you that are getting started with Linux because it'll teach you all the basics. Also, I recently released an Ansible course as well, which will teach you everything you need to know to get up and running with Ansible. Ansible is one of, if not the most popular configuration and automation platforms in the Linux ecosystem, so it's definitely something that you need to learn. Ansible is a powerful and easy-to-learn platform that'll enable you to automate even the most complicated Linux administration tasks. And just like with my Linux course, each lesson will break down even the most complicated components and concepts into easy-to-understand lessons, and by the end of the course, you'll learn everything that you need to know to use Ansible as part of your daily toolset. And thank you guys so much for checking out my new courses. I really appreciate it. Now it's time to get started and check out some of the first things that you should do once you install Fedora Workstation. Let's get started. The first item on my list is a no-brainer, but I'd be remiss if I didn't at least mention it. And what I'm referring to is installing all of your updates. If you've installed Fedora for the very first time, then you'll definitely have some updates available. And by installing all the updates, we'll make sure that we have all the security patches that are available for our system, and it'll also make sure that we have a great starting point for other items on this list. And you might even see a message like this one letting you know that updates are ready for installation. If you click on that message, it'll open up GNOME software to the Updates tab, so that way you can go ahead and install them. However, if you've yet to see that message, what you could do is access the Activities overview, top left corner here, and then we'll go down to GNOME Software, and the Updates tab is where we'll get this done. Anyway, as you use Fedora, it's going to download any updates that are available behind the scenes, and then give you an option to install them as soon as they're ready. In this case right here, the verbiage is restart and update, so what I'll do is click on that, and that'll restart the system. And then we'll click Restart and Install. And once your system reboots, it's going to boot into a special mode where it's going to finish installing updates. And then once this is done, your system will reboot again, and then you'll be ready to use it. And it looks like we're all set. And as we can see right here, we get a message that software updates were installed. And then we can review what was installed. We can click right here for that. And then it gives us a list of updates that were installed during the last update session. But anyway, as you can see, updates were definitely installed, so we should be good to go. One of the first things that I like to do anytime I set up a Linux distribution is, well, set it up. I like to customize it, make the desktop my own. And to see an example of this, what we'll do on Fedora is access Settings, which we see right here. And this application right here will help you customize the majority of the settings that you might be interested in. But you could also access this by opening the System Control menu here. Then we have a shortcut for settings right here. Anyway, what you'll do is go through the various sections here and customize your system. You don't have to customize everything, and I can't go over everything, but anything that you might be interested in tweaking is probably going to be in this menu. Right away, we see Wi-Fi settings. We have visible networks right here. And if you've connected to a network before, you should have a settings icon here for it. And that'll give you the ability to forget the connection if you don't want to use it anymore. Maybe you want to adjust the IP address or some other setting. What most of you are going to do to connect to a Wi-Fi network is just open the system menu, click the little arrow next to Wi-Fi, and that'll show you the networks that are close to you. Once you connect to one, it'll show up in this list with the little settings icon right here. So Wi-Fi is pretty self-explanatory. For those of you that use wired connections, we have a networking tab here. I don't have a cable plugged in right now, so we can't use this, but we have most of the same settings there. For example, you can set a static IP address, your DNS server, or whatever else you need to change. You could do so under this menu. When it comes to Bluetooth, we have a section for Bluetooth devices. So if you have one you want to pair, you could go ahead and do that here. Now on my end, I don't have any Bluetooth devices that I could show you, but if you did, it should be shown right here. For displays, we could choose our video resolution. So you could drop that down and choose a different resolution. We could also go with a different refresh rate if we wanted to. I set the scaling to 200%. On a 4K screen, GNOME often looks like this, where it's just really hard to see because all the text is just way too small. So I like to go to 200% with a 4K display. You lose some screen real estate, but everything is much easier to read. Under sound, we could choose our output device. You have our configuration here. If you have a surround system, then you could choose this. So for example, I should be on digital stereo, balance. We have input devices, if we had one, individual volume levels. So basically all the various sound related controls that you might need are in this menu. Under power, we could choose our power plan, balanced or power saver in this case. For screen blink, you could turn that off if you don't like that. Automatic suspend, you can turn it off or just choose a different time period. So by default, Fedora will suspend, basically go to sleep if it's been idle for 15 minutes, but that's optional. You can also choose what happens when we press the power button. Under multitasking, we have a few different options here. Dynamic workspaces, we can have a fixed number of workspaces instead of dynamic workspaces, beyond the scope of this video, but if you wanted to play around with that, I definitely recommend it. You could also choose how to handle multiple displays when it comes to workspaces. We also have an appearance tab. And one of the more noteworthy things that you could do in this particular section is switch to dark mode, which I know a lot of you are going to like. And dark mode in GNOME is really good. I think they did a very good job. As you can see, it changed the colors. Or we could just go back to the default if we prefer that. Now, I'm not going to go through all of these right here because there's quite a bit to go over. I'll leave it up to you to browse the different settings that you have access to here to customize the desktop and make it your own. After all, exploration is part of the fun. Another trick that I like to make sure that everyone is aware of is the fact that you could group your applications. For example, if I open up the applications list right here, as you already know, we have all of our applications. So let's see how to group applications. And randomly, I'm going to choose LibreOffice Calc. I feel that's related to LibreOffice Writer. So what I'm going to do is left click and drag over here. And what I'll do is release it over top of another icon. What it'll do is come up with a name that it thinks fits what you're trying to do. If you don't like the name, of course, you could type something else, whatever you want to call it. But I think Office was probably the best name for it. Then I'll do the same with this one here. And then you just keep doing this until you have everything organized. Next, we'll consider enabling some online services. And this is really cool. So if we go to the settings screen, we'll see that there's a section for online accounts right here. So this is really simple. If you have an account with any one of these services, what you could do is log into that service. So for example, if you have a Google account, you can sign into it. But the reason why you might want to consider doing this is because it'll give you notable benefits. For example, if you have a calendar with the online service, you'll see calendar notifications within your system notifications, email notifications, and things like that. So obviously I can't show you all of these, but you might want to consider at least setting up your email, perhaps a calendar, and then if you subscribe to any of these other services, you can consider signing into those as well. But when it comes to online accounts, that's basically it. Open up GNOME Settings, click on Online Accounts, and then sign into one or more of those services. Our next mission is to install GNOME Tweaks. But first I'm going to demonstrate why you want to install it in the first place. Anyway, like I mentioned earlier, when you access GNOME Settings, there's quite a few toggles here that you could use to customize your desktop. As you can see, there's a section for almost everything. Now, emphasis on almost everything, because there's some settings missing here that I think should be part of GNOME Settings. But what we'll do is install GNOME Tweak, which will give us some additional controls that we could use to further customize our desktop. To install it, just like normal, we'll access GNOME Software. Then we'll search for GNOME Tweaks. And here it is. I'll click Install. And it was literally that simple. So now, when we access Applications, we can go here to Utilities, and Tweaks will be shown right here. So we'll click on it. We get a little notice here that GNOME Tweak tool is no longer going to give you the ability to customize extensions. And that's okay because we've installed GNOME extensions earlier, so we don't really care about that. So we'll click Continue. And let's take a look at some of the options that we have here that we don't have in GNOME Settings. Here we could customize the fonts of our system. And this is going to be quite handy for quite a few of you, but I don't understand why this wasn't included in GNOME Settings proper, but here we are. So we have customizations for fonts. We have additional appearance options, additional sound options. You get the idea. But anyway, definitely install the GNOME Tweak tool. There's additional options here that you may as well benefit from. My next tip is for those of you that prefer to have a proper dock. Now the thing is, GNOME does have a dock. Notice that if we go to the Activities Overview screen here, we have a dock down here at the bottom. When we have the Activities Overview screen open, this dock within GNOME behaves just as any other dock would, but the thing is, it's only visible from the Activities Overview screen. As soon as I go back to the desktop, I can't see it anymore. Now on my end, I actually like this quite a bit. If I open up an application, for example, there's nothing on my screen other than the applications that I'm working on. And this is because GNOME stays out of my way until I open up the Activities Overview screen. So this dock being restricted to just this screen does indeed give us quite a bit of space back on our desktop, but again, that might not be what you want. And to fix that, what we'll do is install an extension. In fact, I already have the page open. So what you'll do is open up your web browser and then navigate to the URL that you see on the screen right now, which should take you to this page right here. What we'll do is install it. We'll install it. And just like that, we have a dock down here at the bottom of the screen. And what's really cool about this is that intelligent auto hide is enabled. So if I full screen an application, the dock goes away. And as soon as I need the real estate, for example, if a window gets too close to it, it goes away and returns, as you can see. And the behavior of this dock can be customized. So what I'll do is close this right here. Then we'll bring up GNOME extensions, which you may or may not have installed. But anyway, right here we have Dash to Dock. We'll click right here and then go down to Settings. And once you do that, you'll see this screen right here, which gives you quite a bit of control over the dock. For example, you could crank the size, make it smaller. You can move it to the left side of the screen, the bottom part. You get the idea. I'll leave it up to you to explore this menu right here and customize the dock to make it your own. But we were able to install a dock within this section, so mission complete. Moving on, the next thing we're going to do is enable third-party repositories. As a Fedora user, you immediately have access to a large catalog of software as soon as you install Fedora, but unfortunately, you don't have access to everything. Now, some of this can be done during installation. It'll ask you whether or not you want to enable third-party repositories during installation, but even if you didn't choose that option, by the end of this section, you'll have everything set up anyway. So to help fix that, there's a few tweaks we can implement in no particular order. And the first one is within GNOME Software. Once you have it open, what you'll do is click on the main menu right here, and then we're going to click on Preferences. Once you do that, this little window right here will appear, and it'll provide you with a few different toggles. What we want to do is make sure that only free software is disabled. If you have this enabled, then only software that Fedora has tested or approves of will show in the list in regard to Flatpak software. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it. Just understand there's a bit of a content filter that Fedora used to put on here, and they don't do that anymore by default, but you do want to check this and make sure that this is turned off. Now, once we do that, we could go ahead and close both of these menus here. And then what we'll do is move on to the next step. Next, what we'll do is open a web browser, and we'll go to rpmfusion.org, which should bring you to this website right here. RPM Fusion is very popular, and with good reason. It gives you access to quite a bit of additional software. In fact, a few items on this list will directly use RPM Fusion. Once there, you'll see a link to enable RPM Fusion, so we'll click on that. And then we'll scroll down, and we'll get a list of packages here. We'll click on whatever link corresponds to the version of Fedora that we have installed. So I'll click on this one in my case. I'm running Fedora 40. So let's open it. And then we'll install it. All right, so it looks like we have that one done. And then the next thing we'll do is repeat the same step again, also choosing the same version of Fedora as we did last time. So click on this one right here. And that gives us the non-free RPM. So that's the one that I'll click on. And then we'll install it. But believe it or not, that's all there is to it. And now what we've done is verified that we have access to all Flatpak software. We did that in GNOME Settings. And then in addition to that, we set up RPM Fusion, which is going to give us access to quite a bit more software. Sorry to interrupt my own video, but I just wanted to let you know that I appreciate each and every single one of you, and I love creating Linux-related content for you guys. But unfortunately, producing high-quality Linux content like this isn't cheap. But if you want to help me make even more content for you guys, then consider supporting Learn Linux TV. And a great way to do that is to check out the official shop for Learn Linux TV, which was just recently updated. Inside the shop, you'll find distro-themed shirts, bags, drinkware, and more. And there's some other surprises there as well. For example, I've just introduced a mousepad that doubles as a Tmux cheat sheet. How cool is that? So check out the shop at merch.learnlinux.tv, or you could check out the merch shelf right here on YouTube. You could get yourself something really cool and support Linux learning at the same time, so it's a win-win. Anyway, thank you guys so much for your support. I really appreciate it. Now, let's get back to the video. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is install video drivers. Now, you don't always have to do this, but you might be missing out on some hardware acceleration if you don't. Anyway, what we'll do is navigate to the URL that you see on the screen right now, and that'll bring you to this page. This is from the RPM Fusion site, and what we'll do is execute whatever commands corresponds to whatever video card we have in our system. Now, when it comes to Intel and AMD, this doesn't really benefit you as much, but Nvidia users should definitely do this because you'll be missing out on a lot of hardware acceleration as the default driver doesn't really perform all that well, so Nvidia users will especially want to take note. Now, in my system, I have an Nvidia card, so what I'll do is run through the commands that I need for my system. What I'll do is run sudo, and then dnf install, and there's a few additional packages that we'll need beyond the ones shown on the RPM Fusion site. That one was more pertaining to hardware acceleration for video, but we need the actual driver for Nvidia as well. So to do that, we'll install akmod-nvidia, also xorg-x11-drv, NVIDIA-CUDA, and then the package that was mentioned on the RPM Fusion site, which is libva-nvidia-driver. So basically, for those of you that are using Intel and AMD, you could just use the RPM Fusion site and install those packages to get full hardware acceleration, or in the case of NVIDIA, you could install these three packages right here. Note that these packages are coming from RPM Fusion, so if you didn't perform the earlier step, then you won't be able to install these packages. Anyway, I'll press enter. And this is going to result in the installation of quite a few packages, which is normal for NVIDIA. Anyway, I'll answer Y for yes and press enter. Now you might see this message right here anytime you've added a new repository to Fedora. The first time a repository is used, it needs to be confirmed. And since we just installed RPM Fusion earlier, this was expected, so I'll say Y for yes. And we're all set. At this point, the driver should be installed on our system. And in order to use the driver, we'll need to restart our system. I'm not going to worry about that right now. But anyway, with the driver installed, we've completed this step. Next, what we'll do is install some software. Now, Fedora comes with quite a few pieces of software installed by default. So if we access the Activities overview, and then click here to show all applications, you'll see that we have quite a few useful applications installed already. For example, here's LibreOffice. And what we have here is a full Office suite. However, it's a good idea to explore available software. You might find some hidden gems. Anyway, to install software in Fedora, what we'll do is access the Activities overview. And then down here, we'll see an icon for GNOME software. We'll click on it, and that opens up the GNOME software application. And this is something that we've seen a few times during this video so far. But in this section, what we'll do is use it to install software, which is the whole reason why it exists in the first place. And it's pretty straightforward. You can think of this as an app store. If you scroll down, you'll see that there's a few different categories here. So you could click on a category and then install an application. For example, we have text editors. We have all kinds of things. And this button right here will take us back to the home page. And there's also some picks down here. Maybe one of these will interest you. I can click on the solitaire game. And then once you find something you want to install, you just click on it. And then down here, you'll see that there's different sources for the application. Now, for most of you, you could just simply click install. But if you need to get it from a specific source, you could click this drop down right here to select that source. It's defaulting to the Flatpak version, which is going to be generally newer most of the time than what distributions include. We have the distribution down here. So if you want to install the RPM version, then you'll click this right here. But you could also install another Flatpak, the FlatHub version, which might be even more up to date. But if you don't have a preference, what you could do is simply click install. And now it's installed. And to launch it, we can click open. And then if we change our mind, we can click the trash icon here to remove it. Also, in addition to that, we have an installed tab. And now that I've installed Solitaire, we see it on the list. And I could also uninstall it from this tab. Once you do remove an application, it'll give you an option to remove its data as well if you'd like. So I'll just delete the data for that application and uninstall it. And now it's gone. So as you can see, it's pretty easy to use GNOME software. And another thing I forgot to show you is that you can search for a package if you already know the name of it. So for example, I want to install KeePassXC. Is it available? Yes, it is. Let's install it. And there we go. And once you install any application, it'll be available in the application screen, which is right here. So as you can see, we have KeePassXC because I just installed it. And another thing you could do is drag it down here to the panel. So I'll drop mine right here. So now every time we access the activities overview screen, we'll have our favorite applications down here at the bottom. And of course, if we change our mind, we can also right click and unpin an application if we don't want it to appear down here. So as you can see, I unpinned the application, which caused it to return to the menu here. But anyway, with all that said, you now know how to install software on Fedora. All right, so moving on, the next thing we'll do is enable tray icons. And this is a pretty interesting problem, and what I'll do right now is demonstrate the problem. So earlier, I installed KeePassXC, and here it is. So I'll open that up. And there's an option within KeePassXC and many other applications where you could basically have a tray icon. So on other operating systems, you're probably used to seeing it right around here. Now, if you scroll down here, there's going to be an option to turn this feature on. In the case of this application, some applications do this by default. But what I'll do is show a tray icon. And I'm going to check this box right here to help keep it running. And what I'll do also is minimize it down to the tray icon. Anyway, I'll save the settings. And now that I've saved the settings, we should have a tray icon. But the thing is, we don't. So again, this is an interesting problem because in GNOME's infinite wisdom, they decided that their desktop environment doesn't need system tray icons because it's something that's dying off. And that's just simply not true because, well, even Mac uses tray icons. So I don't think tray icons are going to go away anytime soon. So let's go ahead and fix this problem right now. Now, in order to fix this, we'll need to do two different things. The first thing is to install GNOME extensions, which I've already installed. And it's right here. GNOME Extensions is easily installable via GNOME software. Once you have that installed, we'll open it up. And what this is going to do is give us a list of extensions that we have installed. Right here we have system extensions, so these are built in. And if we install an extension, it's going to appear down here in a different section. Now what we're going to do is navigate to a special website, the GNOME Extensions site. What I'll do right now is show a URL on the screen that'll take you directly to this page. Anyway, what we'll do is install it. And actually, that's about it. If we close this and go back to the extensions tool, we see a user extension section, and we have the extension listed right here. Now, for some reason, we might need to log out and then log back in for this to take effect. I have no idea why that might be necessary, but I'll just go ahead and do it. And then we can log back in. And let's test it out. I was going to use KeePassXC as a test, so let's do it. And already, we can see right here, we have a tray icon. So by installing this extension, we have re-enabled tray icon support. And the reason why I had you install the extensions tool is specifically because this gives you the ability to control or manage your extensions. So if for some reason you decided not to use this anymore, you could disable it. As you can see, the tray icon went away. We now no longer have tray icon support. And now it's back. If you get tired of it though, you could click right here and then click remove to remove the extension from your system. But anyway, with that done, we have successfully enabled tray icon support on Fedora. All right, the next item on my list is also really short and quick. What we're going to do is solve something that really annoys me. And maybe this might annoy you as well. There's this alert sound that plays on the GNOME desktop way too often, like for the littlest thing. For example, here on the terminal, I could press backspace. There's nothing to delete, but I'll press backspace anyway. And wasn't that annoying? And it's not that I hate having sound effects, it's just that it's way too common. So to solve this, what we could do is access Settings, and then we'll go to Sound, and then scroll down a bit. And the last item right here is the alert sound. We're going to set that to none. And that should be all there is to it. Now when I press the backspace key, we don't hear that annoying sound effect anymore. So for those of you that are annoyed by overly egregious sound effects, this one was for you. The next thing we're going to do is install Google Chrome. Now, not everyone is going to need to do this because Firefox is included by default, and if you like Firefox, then you're good to go. But some people prefer Google Chrome, or maybe your company requires you to install it to test software on it. By the way, let's go ahead and get it installed. Now, there's a few different ways that we could go about this. We could use the standard method, the method that we've been using since the beginning of this video to install software, GNOME software. What we could do in most cases at least is search for Google Chrome, and it might appear on the list. If it does, we'll click on it, and we'll make sure that it's coming from dl.google.com. Now, you may or may not have this on the list. If you've enabled third-party repositories earlier, then that'll probably make this appear in the list. But even if it doesn't appear in the list, there's another way that we can install it. So what I'll do is open up Firefox. Then we can simply search for Google Chrome. Pretty straightforward. And here it is. And we get a download button. We can download Google Chrome right from the website. Now, if Google Chrome is visible within GNOME software, you should install it from there. But if not, we'll install it from here. So I'll click on this right here. Let's make sure that we download the 64-bit RPM for Fedora. We'll click Accept and Install. And up here, we can see that it's downloading. Once it's done, we'll simply click on it. And this will bring up GNOME software, but notice that the selection is local file. That's because we downloaded an RPM and we attempted to install it. And it looks like it's done. So just like any other application, what we could do, just find it in our applications list. Once we install a bunch of applications, it's not uncommon to have several pages here. But anyway, Google Chrome is installed. Anyway, here it is. Let's just test it out. And as you can see, it works. All right, the next item on the list is to enable support for multimedia files. Before we do this, though, I do recommend that you install your video drivers first, because that's going to be half the battle. We definitely need to have proper support for our video card, our GPU, to enable video support. So that's pretty much a prerequisite. So hopefully you've already done that. And if you have, we could continue. Now there's a few different things we're going to do in no particular order. And the first of those is to open GNOME software. Now another requirement is RPM Fusion, which we've installed earlier in this video. And then in the search box, we'll type VLC. Now there's definitely other video players out there, but VLC plays pretty much everything, so that's what I recommend. So I'll click on that, and I'll install it. And now, as you can see, it's installed. And we have the application. VLC is able to play video files and audio files. It's a great application. And you know what? That's going to satisfy the majority of you guys, but there's still a few more things that we could do to make sure that we have the best possible experience. So next what I'll do is open up a terminal. And what we'll do is run a few commands. So what I'll do is type out the first one right now. And here it is. Now, FFmpeg is a special library for video files. I'm not going to go too deep into that, but it's possible that you might need it. And the thing is, FFmpeg is installed by default on Fedora, so you don't really have to do anything to get this. However, the RPM Fusion version does work better than the one that comes with Fedora. And that's why we are swapping FFmpeg free with FFmpeg. FFmpeg coming from RPM Fusion. So I'll press enter. And it's going to have a few different dependencies here, but anyway, I'll type Y and then press enter. Y and then enter to confirm. And now that step is complete. Now the next thing we're going to do is enable DVD support. You can skip this if you have no intention of ever watching a DVD on your system, but if you ever think that you might want to go through with this, especially considering, well, it's easy. And this also requires RPM Fusion, but there's actually going to be a tweak that we'll make to RPM Fusion for this step. What we'll do is install a package. And what this is going to do is enable another RPM Fusion repository, this one including the software that we'll need to enable DVD support. So I'll install it. Y and then enter. And now that's done. The second part of this is to install a package from the repository that we've just added. And the package that we're going to need is libdvdcss. So let's install that. Type Y and then enter to confirm. And that's it. At this point, your Fedora system should handle multimedia a lot better. In this section, what we're going to do is install Steam. Now, before we actually install it, I just want to point out that you'll need to make sure that you have your video driver set up first, because you can't really play a game without proper hardware acceleration, so make sure that you've completed that step first. And that's especially true for those of you that use Nvidia. Now, assuming you've already taken care of that, let's go ahead and get Steam installed. And to do that, we'll open, you guessed it, GNOME Software. And what we'll do is search for Steam. And here it is. Now we have a few different versions of Steam available here. I'm going to go with the default. You could experiment with each of those if you'd like to, but I'll just install this one. Let's do it. And it looks like it's done, so I'll click open. Now that Steam is fully up to date, it launched and it's ready to go. So I'll log in. If you're curious what's in my library, here you go. Thought this might be amusing if you're curious the types of games that I play, mostly the older games. But I have quite a few games on here, as you can see. So I can't show you all of them. But here you can see my favorites, so there's that. Anyway, with that done, I hope you enjoy gaming on Fedora. Continuing, it's time to set up a virtual machine. And although VirtualBox is a pretty good solution, I'm not going to walk you through installing that because Fedora has a built-in solution for virtual machines. So if we go to the Activities overview, and then under All Applications, what we're going to have is an application called GNOME Boxes. And it may not be apparent for those of you that are just starting out, but this is a full virtualization solution and it's available out of the box. There's nothing you need to install. So literally, the goal in this section is to simply install a virtual machine. Before we do that though, we do need to make sure that virtualization extensions are enabled on our system. If you don't have virtualization enabled in your BIOS, then when you go to create a virtual machine within GNOME Boxes, you'll see this error right here. So what we're doing now is just making sure that virtualization is enabled before we get started. And the way you go about this differs from one computer to the next. I'm going to show you the process on my computer, but the thing is, it's not going to be exactly the same on yours. But there should be a way to enable virtualization on your computer, Anyway, on my end, I've already accessed the BIOS screen here. I'm going to select the first option, Advanced Frequency Settings. And then in my case, I'm going to scroll down to Advanced CPU Settings. And what we're looking for is this option right here, SVM mode. And all we have to do is select this option here, then go down to Enabled, and that should be it. So what I'll do is just go up here to Save My Settings. And that should be all there is to it. All right, so my system is booting up. And you're able to see the startup screens because on this channel, I always use real hardware unless I tell you otherwise. Anyway, now that I've enabled virtualization extensions, let's log back in. And what we'll do is open up GNOME Boxes. And here it is. So when you first open GNOME Boxes, we'll see this welcome tutorial. And I'll leave it up to you to review this. But anyway, we'll close out of this, and then we'll create our first virtual machine. We'll click this plus icon right here. And what you could do is install from an ISO file if you already have one downloaded, or you can have GNOME Boxes take care of that for you. What I'm going to do is choose Ubuntu 24.04. And as you can see, it's downloading. Now that it's done, at this screen here, we could choose how much memory, how much storage we allow this particular virtual machine to have access to. I think that's good enough. I'll just leave it at the defaults here. And it's starting up. And check it out. It says preparing Ubuntu, so it looks like it's finishing its setup. Just go ahead and make this full screen. I'll click Try Ubuntu. And check it out, we have Ubuntu running in Fedora. If you want to leave full screen mode, all you have to do is just go up here, click on this icon here, and then it returns to windowed mode. But anyway, as you can see, we now have GNOME Boxes installed here on our Fedora system, and it's ready to go. And there's our video. I hope you enjoyed this list of the first things that you should do on Fedora Workstation. If you did, be sure to click that like button. Anyway, I have some awesome videos coming if I do say so myself, so definitely subscribe to Learn Linux TV for the latest in Linux, and I'll see you in the next video.